Hey role players, today's video is going to be all about the Blade Pact Warlock. Now I already put one of these up, but I just wasn't satisfied with the quality of it, and I felt you guys deserve so much better. So I took it down, I re-edited it, I added some extra content, and now you've got this much better quality video. So hopefully you guys will learn something and hopefully you'll enjoy it. So there's a lot of interesting theories floating around the internet about how you want to concentrate on dexterity for your Glaivelock. This isn't a bad idea because you're going to get reflex saving throw bonus, initiative bonus, ranged attack bonus, and finesse attack bonus. So it is a strong option. However, if you're going for damage, then you're probably going to find that going strength is a better option, and I'm going to explain to you why. This has the drawback of being a multiple ability score dependent character, thus you would need strength, dexterity, constitution and charisma to make the whole thing viable. So I looked at some of the other feats and I thought, well, how can we improve the potential for the Glaivelock if we're not going to go with dexterity? So with the Pact of the Blade, your action is going to create in your empty hand a melee weapon. You're proficient in it while you wield it, and it counts as magical for the purposes of overcoming resistance and immunity to non-magical attacks and damage. You can also choose to have a magical weapon be your pact weapon. But I was looking at the various invocations that you get, and you only get two that apply to this pact. One is your additional attack, and one is your additional damage. So it seems to me that it doesn't really matter what you do, you're only going to get two attacks anyway. And two attacks, even with the best scores of dexterity or strength and the best score of charisma, is only at best going to get you two lots of weapon damage, two lots of strength and two lots of charisma. So I thought there's got to be a way to make this stronger. So what's the best way to get some extra attacks on the go? Well, you could look at two weapon fighting, but the real problem with this is it really gives you very, very, very little. You don't get bonuses from your pact weapon on your other weapon because you can only have one pact weapon at a time. So therefore you don't get Life Drinker, and you don't get any of your strength or dexterity damage depending on which you're using because you don't have that particular fighting style. You get nothing for trying to fight with two weapons. So thinking about this, I thought, well, I'm going to have to bring it down to one weapon. How am I going to do this, and how best to get more out of it? What are the options? I came up with an idea for a fighter who actually specialises in polearm, and I wondered if perhaps I couldn't take some of the ideas that I used in that character and then transfer them across to the Glaivelock. Polearm Master grants you an additional attack by using the opposite end of your weapon to deal damage. It's only D4 points, but this is kind of immaterial. So what's really important about the Polearm Master's bonus attack is that you still get to apply your full strength modifier, and you still get to apply any bonuses you might get from taking an attack roll penalty due to Great Weapon Master. Now, the best weapon for the Glaivelock is either going to be the glaive or the halberd. In 5th edition, they're basically two sides of the same coin. They're the same price, they're the same weight, they're the same damage, they're the same rules. You get reach, you get heavy, and you get two-handed. What you have to realise as from a damage standpoint is dice aren't really there to do the damage. Now that sounds crazy, I know, but experienced role players know that your damage doesn't really come from your dice, your damage comes from your pluses. So, with the glaive, with the Polearm Master, with the Great Weapon Master, you can actually get 3 attacks. 3 attacks with your pact weapon, 3 attacks applying your strength, 3 attacks applying your Great Weapon Master, 3 attacks applying maybe Hex, 3 attacks applying your Life Drinker. So let's see how this fares when you compare it to something like Eldritch Blast. Now, Eldritch Blast with Agonizing Blast, it's a very, very strong option, and as you level up, it progresses very well. You get a lot of damage out of it. There's no reason that even the Glaivelock wouldn't take this. For one cantrip, which we use all the time, and one invocation, it's definitely worth having in your arsenal. But what tends to happen is you get other kinds of warlocks, like chain warlocks, and they're going to be using Agonizing Blast all the time. When I say Agonizing Blast or Eldritch Blast, I'm going to talk about them interchangeably because you're going to have both. You're going to have both the invocation and the cantrip as well, but there's no reason ever not to take the invocation. Now what I've done for you guys quickly here was to throw together a little graph to show you the maximum damage potential. Now you're probably looking at it and thinking, Bard, do you even graph? Well, no, not a maths guy. So there's just something I want to say about the graph before we get too far into it. And these figures are based entirely on the maximum possible outcome. These figures assume that you have the maximum possible strength, the maximum possible charisma, and they assume that you hit every time, and they assume that you roll the maximum damage every time. Now, I don't know much about probability, and I don't know much about averaging these rolls, so I'm just giving you the maximum potential figures. I want you to know that before we get really involved, because it's very important that you understand that this is what the class can achieve, not necessarily what it will achieve. Now obviously in blue we've got Agonizing Blast, so Eldritch Blast with Agonizing Blast invocation. Red here we've got Agonizing Blast and Hex, and then as you can see green is Polearm Master with Hex for yellow, and then orange is actually Polearm Master with Hex and Great Weapon Masters -5 +10 bonus. Be aware that orange line is the absolute top end, basically applying everything that you can apply. And some very interesting things start to happen when we look at the numbers. So what we get with Agonizing Blast is a very smooth progression. At second level, when you get your charisma bonus added on, because this is the earliest time you can take it as far as I'm aware, you're going to take Agonizing Blast. Even the Glaivelock should really take this. It's a very good choice. It actually caps out at 60 points. Remember, this is assuming that you roll maximum on everything. Now when you start adding in something like Hex, which you'll see on the red line, you actually, with each progression of Agonizing Blast, it actually jumps a little higher each time, because every time the Hex procs is based off how many attacks you get. Hex deals your additional d6 damage, and then you get 2d6 with 2 blasts, 3d6 with 3 blasts, and so on and so forth. Personally, I think it's one of the best options as a spell that you're going to use over and over again if you're trying to take down a single target. But let's look at the Pact of the Blade. Since you only get your weapon at level 3, your damage only really starts at level 3. But immediately, as soon as you're able to get hold of a two-handed weapon, like a glaive for instance, you're going to get d10 plus your strength modifier. We're going to assume a natural score of 20. So let's say you're, I don't know, a Dragonborn or whatever. So instantly you're looking at 15 damage if you follow this green line. There's a jump at level 4 where you get Polearm Master. That's an additional attack plus additional strength. And then there's a jump again at level 5, applying your Thirsting Blade. And something very interesting happens here. You can see that it caps out pretty much at level 5. Now when you add Hex to that as well, if you follow the yellow line, by the time you hit level 5, you'll see that it's pushing 60 damage. That's really high, really high. So it's only really at level 12 when your attack and damage kind of caps. If you're going to multi-class, now would be the time to leave and go into something else, if that's what you want to do. Because you get an extra bonus to damage. And after that, there's nothing more that you can apply invocation-wise that will help. If we follow the red line on our graph, you can actually see where Eldritch Blast, Agonizing Blast and Hex actually peaks at level 17. This is a total of 84 damage potential maximum. That's very, very high. And it actually outclasses the Glaivelock. From level 12, the Glaivelock is pretty much king until level 17, where Eldritch Blast becomes the absolute best choice again. However, at level 8, you can pick up Great Weapon Master. Now this is a dangerous feat because obviously you're going to be sacrificing accuracy for damage, but if you like to throw caution to the wind, as I do, then you're going to find that you're going to get a lot of extra damage out of this. Now, it might seem like a good idea to just stick with Eldritch Blast, but what's important to remember is unless you've got a feat like Spell Sniper, you're going to be at disadvantage if you're firing into a melee. So you're still not going to be hitting as often if you're forced into a disadvantaged situation, because taking a penalty on your attack roll means you'll not get as much potential damage as if you were just having straight rolls. Glaivelock might actually seem quite feat intensive, but even if you're just a regular sort of chain pact or tome pact warlock, you still kind of need to take that spell sniper feat in order to get the most potential damage out of your Eldritch Blast. So the Blade Pact and the other Warlock Pact actually do somewhat even out when it comes to selecting feats, because you do have to really invest in those depending on whether you're going to go melee or ranged. What makes the Great Weapon Master quite preferable, then you're going to want to try to get into the best position possible, and obviously you're going to try for the flank, and obviously that's going to give you some form of advantage anyway. You can mitigate some of that -5 penalty on attack rolls by basically having 2 dice. I mean, you can always, chuck Lucky into the mix. That's not a bad feat either. That's probably one of the best and strongest feats in the entire game, if you've got room for it. Another really great feat you could consider is Sentinel. You might think that this is one for your tanks in the group, but I think it's actually got a lot more potential than that. The reaction attacks and the additional reach for attacks of opportunity and being able to stop opponents, this is very strong for you. Great Weapon Master with Hex, with maximum strength, with maximum charisma, and taking that penalty each time. If you hit every time, your maximum potential damage output caps at 102. Now this doesn't include your weapon, because you can turn a magical weapon into your pact weapon. The thing is, you can't control when you're going to get a magical weapon. The graph also doesn't include the potential for attacks of opportunity, and nor does it take into account the potential for being able to use your reaction by virtue of your feat to make additional attacks. So be aware that even though the graph is showing you a standard round by round set of numbers, your potential amount of attacks in a round could be much greater, simply depending on situation. Again, that's another thing that you yourself can't really control, but it's still worth looking at when you're considering whether to go Glaivelock or Spell Lock. So what are good choices for the Glaivelock? I always wanted to play a Dragonborn Glaivelock, but looking at it, yeah, it's actually probably one of, if not the best choice. Simple fact is it gets a strength bonus straight away. So it gets +2 strength and it gets +1 charisma. That's everything you're going to use. Everything. By the time you hit level 12, chances are that's when you're going to use your ability score improvement to max out your charisma. So you want to get your strength up to 20, your charisma up to 20. Another really good choice for Glaivelock is actually Half Elf. You get your +2 charisma and then +2 to any other 2 ability scores of your choice, which really are going to be strength, and then it's going to be a choice between constitution and dexterity. Having the advantage against being charmed and can't be put to sleep is also nice. Proficiency in the extra skills is just something you can take advantage of. But likewise with the Dragonborn, you also get resistance. I mean, based on whatever colour your dragon ancestry is. So resistance fire, resistance cold, resistance acid, these are all great choices. As a warlock, you're going to have to pick a patron that gives you your power. Now each of them does have some form of option that is useful for the Glaivelock. Probably the best choice is going to be Fiend as your otherworldly patron. The Dark One's Blessing, gaining you temporary hit points, is very, very useful. Because you're going to be in the thick of it in the melee, you really want to take advantage of those additional hit points. However, you have to remember you have a reach weapon. Reach is great for using your companions as cover, or at the very least attacking from further away than your party's main sentinel will be standing. So if you have a sentinel in your party, or as most other people like to say, a tank, really work from behind him or her to deal your damage as they sponge up all the hits that come in. So hopefully you've learned a little something about the Glaivelock. Perhaps you see a bit more potential in it now than you did before. If this is your second time around and you've already seen the previous video and obviously it wasn't as good, hopefully you think this one's a little bit better. But be sure to re-comment or re-like, and I will see you guys next time. Happy adventuring.